Hey, it's Katie, and welcome back to my BookTube channel. Today I am doing a full book review on Lore by Alexandra Bracken, and this was in my 5-star predictions video, and I think I read it pretty quickly after that, and I loved it. I was a little worried because I had such high hopes for it, but I ended up really liking it, and one of my subscribers asked me to do a full review on it, so I'm very happy to do that for you guys, and I will be sharing my thoughts with you today. And the first thing I want to say is the reason that I had such high hopes for this is because I ended up getting 2 versions of the book because I get Fairy Loot and Owl Crate subscriptions, if you didn't know, and they both included this in their January boxes. So I have 2 versions of the book, so I was really hoping I enjoyed it because I have 2 copies, and if I didn't like it, that would have been kind of sad. And also, I had heard a lot of people on TikTok and just all over the book community saying that they were a little confused with all of the mythological aspects of it, so I was a little worried about that. But I'm going to show off my versions of the book, and then we will get into the summary and my thoughts. So this one is the Owl Crate book. So the original version of the book cover is all white, and so they made it black, which is super cool, and it is signed by the author, which I love. And then the Fairy Loot edition is absolutely stunning. So they kept the white, but they changed the cover here, and then they added these gold snakes along the sides, and then all the edges are sprayed yellow, and there's more snakes right here. This one's also signed, by the way, but then they did these custom end papers, which are super cute. And then there's this shield here. Hopefully you guys can see that. And then here there's another little symbol, and then it says the games have begun and she's playing for her life, which I love because usually you just have the title here. So I love that there's a little quote, and then on the inside of the dust jacket there is some artwork of the characters. We have Lore and Castor, and it's stunning, and I'm obsessed with that version. But we're gonna set that one off to the side. So Lore is a mythological urban fantasy standalone, and if that doesn't draw you in enough, it's about this thing called the Agon, which Zeus created in the past to punish the gods and goddesses. And the Agon means that every 7 years for 7 days, the gods and goddesses walk the earth as mortals, and the descendants of their bloodlines hunt them down. And if they're killed, the person that kills them gets their immortality and their powers. And that is just such a cool concept, and it's so well done in this book. Like I said, a lot of people had some concerns and said it was a little confusing because there was mythology in here and they didn't really have any experience with mythology, so they didn't really understand some of the things that were happening. But I am happy to say that that wasn't the case for me. I've always been really interested in mythology, so I do have like a tiny bit of background knowledge. Mainly, I just recognize a lot of the gods and goddesses' names, and sometimes I do have some background knowledge on what their like main thing is. Like Athena is the goddess of war and wisdom, I think. So like those kinds of tidbits I remembered. But other than that, I don't really have a lot of background knowledge, but I was still really happy that I didn't feel confused reading this, because I feel like since it is like a retelling of mythology, you really learn all you need to know through the story, and I really enjoyed that. And also in the front of the book, there is, let me find it, there's like a little chart of all of the living lines that are talked about. So it has like the house of Odysseus, and it says like what they're called, and then talks about like this is the bearers of the mark of the Trojan horse, exalted by Heartkeeper, Aphrodite reborn. So it like gives you little tidbits where you can kind of check back if you're a little confused. And then also in the back of the book, we have the cast of characters. And as far as I know, I don't think there's any spoilers just by looking at this. If you wanted to, throughout the book, skim through this and learn a little bit about the characters, like remember who they are if they're mentioned, I feel like that's really helpful. I didn't even know this was here until after I finished the book, but I love that it mentions all of the characters you hear about. I think that's very helpful. So if you do get confused, go ahead and like check out those resources because I feel like that should help with some of the confusion. So our main character, Lore, wants absolutely nothing to do with the Agon because in one of the past Agons, her whole family was murdered. And so she's doing everything in her power to stay away from them and to just survive, essentially. But one day she comes home to find Athena wounded on her doorstep, and they end up deciding to work together to take down the person that murdered Lore's family and also to kind of get away from the Agon altogether. I really loved Lore as a main character because even though she has a very tragic past with what happens to her family, she's not very timid. She's very badass, very vengeful. Not at first, because like it says, she doesn't want any part of it. But once Athena kind of brings her back in, she kind of connects to that need for vengeance again. And she's also just this very jagged character because of what happened in her past. And I love that she has so many layers because she has all of those darker emotions. But at the end of the day, she really does still care about people, like her best friend in this book who you'll meet, and just New York City as a whole. She really cares about the people there. So you really get like two sides of a coin with her, but it's really cool to have a character that is that jagged, and it really kept me interested in her and trying to find out what really happened in her past, because you find out that her family was murdered, but she never really shares any details about it. So as the book goes on, you learn more and more about what happened, and that was really interesting. It was also really sad, but I really loved that aspect of her as a character and that aspect of this book. As you saw on the dust jacket of the other version of Lore, Castor is another main character, and I'm not going to tell you too much about him because I feel like there's a couple plot twists at the beginning, so it might spoil some things if I share too much, but I really loved him as a character, and I loved seeing him work together with Lore. Their teamwork was amazing, and I just loved their relationship together. They just both do care for each other in a way that I feel like is unmatched with some of the other characters, and I love that I think they knew each other in childhood and kind of reconnected. And I think that's probably all I can really say, but it was just a really nice relationship, and I really liked seeing them work together. I feel like, again, they made such a great team. One of my favorite parts of Lore was seeing all of the gods and goddesses as kind of main characters, or at least important side characters, because I feel like usually when you have mythology in books, it's usually not like the main gods and goddesses you would hear about growing up. And even if it was like they had a very small part, like very tiny. And so I loved that you saw so much of these gods and goddesses and their descendants and everything. And it was really cool because usually when you think of the gods and goddesses, they're kind of like these all-powerful beings, and like nothing can really take them down, knock them down a peg, anything like that. So I feel like the Agon and this world definitely twisted that for sure. You see a lot of their flaws and things that could be their downfall, and obviously the whole point of the games is to kill them, so you do see some of them lose their lives. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but I just love that aspect of it because I always think of them as these untouchable beings, and it was really cool to see this spin on it for sure. As you can imagine, with the Agon as the main aspect of this book, there's a ton of action, and I honestly really loved it because I felt like it kind of gave me Hunger Games vibes, and mainly because the whole point is to hunt down these gods and goddesses and kill them to like steal their powers and everything. And it honestly is very brutal, which I didn't really expect at first for some reason. You know, I mean, they're gods and goddesses, so I feel like I should have known it was going to be really brutal, but it caught me off guard a little bit, but it definitely fits the vibe of the story. But between the action, the brutality, and the whole point of the games, definitely gave me Hunger Games vibes, because there's people here who are really into the game and want to win and like get as much power as possible, and there's other people that just want to survive. And I don't know, I was really happy it gave me Hunger Games vibes, because I haven't really found another book that gave me similar vibes in a while. So maybe check it out. Hopefully you guys feel the same way. I also loved the cool powers that some of the characters had because, again, it's mythological, so a lot of them have these really cool powers from the gods and goddesses, and I love things that feel like superheroes or magical and all that stuff, and this kind of had a good combination of both. And so Their powers are really cool. Honestly, kind of scary if you ever thought about living in a world where people had these powers. I definitely would not be a fan of that, but it was very cool to read about. There were so many plot twists in here. Like, there were some smaller plot twists, which still caught me off guard, but there were some huge plot twists that I was not expecting. And I feel like usually I can spot a plot twist, but this just had so many. I feel like sometimes every time I thought I knew what was happening, it was like, nope, there's another plot twist. And I was like, oh, okay. But that just made this book so much better because I never wanted to put it down. I always had things I was thinking about, trying to figure out. I just wanted to know what was going to happen. And I feel like this would honestly make a really great movie. I feel like if it had good production and everything, it would be really cool to see this played out on the screen. I have no idea who would play these characters, but I feel like it'd be really cool, especially with those powers I was telling you guys about. Seeing some of the scenes where those powers are involved would be really cool to visualize, because in my brain they looked really cool, but it'd be really fun for other people to be able to see them as well. I also really loved the ending of this because it is a standalone, so everything did kind of get wrapped up, but there was still a little bit that left you wondering what was going to happen. Not in like a way where you needed another book, but just in a way where not everything was wrapped up in a bow. You still got to kind of imagine a little more with the ending, if that makes sense. So I really enjoyed that because I love getting, feeling content with the ending of a book and still being able to imagine different aspects of the ending. Hopefully that made sense. It makes sense in my heart, but I don't know if that was really English. Overall, this book had a great balance of like the historical, mythological elements and like all of the action scenes to kind of keep the story moving. It was very fast paced, which I love. And with the historical and knowledge part, it's not something like we had to bring to the story. It's explained to you and you get to hear a lot about their past. There are some chapters which are flashbacks from 7 years ago, so you do get some like historical aspects in that way, which was really great. And I feel like it was a good balance of that, so you understood what was happening, but also all the action scenes and the Agon itself. So that was really great. I loved the pacing of the story, and I also loved that there was romance in here, and there were dashes of that, and also dashes of like those darker emotions and things that like inner turmoil that characters had to work through as well. So this had everything I usually look for in books, which is amazing. Like I said, this book was in my 5-star predictions and I ended up giving it 5 stars. I'm so happy to say that. It's so good and I highly recommend you guys read this book. I would love to have more people to talk about it with. So if you're on the fence about reading it, this is your sign. If you heard things in this review that you liked, I highly recommend you pick this one up. It's so good, and I don't know too many people who have read it, so I'd love to talk to you guys about it if you wanted to comment below here once you read it, or I also have my Bookstagram and my Goodreads linked below if you want to be friends there, but hopefully you guys read this and enjoy it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would love to meet more of you guys and make some more book friends. But if you do subscribe, make sure to click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.